But I guess we'll start, Pratheesh, because otherwise it might get too late.
Okay.
Okay, fine. So very good evening or good morning to people, depending on where you're in the world. And welcome back to Aquatic and Fisheries Science Talks. And this is our talk number 49. We are reaching the half-century mark. So my name is Mukta Menon, and I'm a senior scientist working at Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute, India. And I'll be hosting this webinar today. And along with me are my co-host, Dr. Deepak George, research scientist, Department of Fisheries, Government of NT, Australia, and Dr. Sajana, I am scientist at Central Inland Fisheries Research Institute, India. And they're here to help out with any technical issues. So if you have any technical issues during the talk, please, you can directly message them in the chat box. And a little bit about AFS Talks. By now, most of you are familiar with this small, paragraph that we read out every time. But AFS Talks is an ongoing bi-weekly webinar series inviting speakers from around the world to share information and developments in the area of aquatic science in general. Our aim is to link students, professionals, and researchers to communicate and collaborate in order to develop a skilled workforce which will contribute to meaningful science. So this platform is open for anyone who loves hearing a science talk and loves giving a science talk as well. And our upcoming talks are announced on our FB page as well as in our WhatsApp groups. Please note that the event is definitely free, but admission is only for Zoom accounts with a profile name. And we do not issue any e-certificates for attending the webinar. And during the webinar, the speaker has 45 minutes for the talk and 15 minutes for interacting with the audience. And for the audience, please keep your mic muted throughout, unless you have a question during discussion time. And keeping your webcam on and off is totally up to you, depending on your bandwidth, data bandwidth. And but while you're asking questions during the discussion time, it would be nice to have your webcam on. And regarding your questions or queries, please type them in the chat box beforehand so that everyone can see and read your questions. And during your discussion time, you can just ask them orally to the speaker. We'll also be putting out a feedback link in the chat box. Kindly do give your feedback that time. Now on to the speaker of the day. I'm very, very happy and delighted to introduce our one of our AFS Talks board members and our speaker of the day, Dr. Pratheesh Sudhakaran. Pratheesh is an applied economist with more than 12 years of experience in academia and industry in the fields of fisheries, aquaculture, natural resources, and agriculture. He did his undergraduate degree in Fisheries Science from Kerala Agricultural University. Later, he moved to Tanzania to work in a seafood processing firm. Subsequently, with 3 years of industry experience, he moved to the US to pursue his MS in aquaculture and fisheries. And later on, he moved to the University of Rhode Island for his Ph.D. And during his Ph.D., he worked on different research projects in consumer behavior on food and natural resource management issues. And upon completing his PhD, Pratheesh started his teaching career at Tarrant County Community College. And after working there for a year, he joined Texas State University, where he's currently assistant professor in agribusiness/economics. So in his talk, he will explain the importance of price volatility in seafood market with a case study from the US catfish industry. So Pratheesh, the virtual floor is all yours and looking forward to a very, very interesting talk. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mukta. Thank you for the introduction. I think this is the second time that I'm giving talk in AFS Talks platform. Once again, thank you and Deepak for giving that opportunity. So let me share the screen. Just want to make sure everyone can see my screen, right? My PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, it is visible, but maybe you can make it into the slideshow.
Yes, yeah, I'm going to be in a minute. I just want to make sure that you guys are not seeing any other things other than this PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So today's talk, I'm concentrating on what is the role of price volatility in any market, and specifically since we are like more into seafood, we are looking into the seafood market scenario. So this is a very, very technical work or section. So I know most of our audience is mostly a variety, diverse audience. which probably not get used to the economic concept and all those things. So I just the flow of the talk is like I just give a brief introduction of why we are going for a price volatility study. And then I summarize with a case study from US catfish industry, which I did along with Pratheesh Sudhakaran and Madan Day. Both of them are employees of Texas State University. We recently published this paper in Aquaculture Economics and Management. Okay, so first I would like to start with a graph, which I don't know whether everybody remembers this one, but those who have taken classes in CUFOS, Kerala Agriculture, now CUFOS, the earlier Fisheries College, Manangad, this graph reminds probably some of you with Dr. Raju sir's economic class. So it is a neoclassical supply and demand relationship. So it's a very commonly non-economic concept. So here what it is saying is the demand, as the demand for a product increases, the price will also increase. So it's showing with the red line, as the price increases, the demand also increases. Or in other words, like the demand increases, the price is also high. And on the other side, as the supply increases, the price will start flowing down. And eventually what happens is like, there's an interplay between demand and supply. And after that, the price will, so as the demand increases, the supply started to increase it. So as the supply started increasing, the price started going down. So it eventually what happens is the price will come to a certain place where we call it as the equilibrium price. And that's where we saw, as the product price in the market. So market is what the market will adjust automatically this demand and supply shift to come to this equilibrium price. But so this is what we have learned in our economic classes. But the one thing that we always forget is that this is a very generalized relationship. And here, whenever we talk about this relationship, we use a Greek term in between, ceteris paribus. That means all other factors are considered same. So what all other factors that might contribute some changes or some shift in this behavior? So in this particular talk, we are more concentrating on the price nature or the price side of the story rather than the demand, the quantity side of it. So what are the factors that might affect the price? So the first one we saw, supply and demand. So it is the interplay of the supply and demand, and the price will change accordingly. The second one is consumer perception. So if there is a perception change in among consumers saying that, I don't like bony fishes anymore. So if that's the case, after some time, the fillet market will be the one who gets more market and more price. So then the price of the whole fish will go down because of the change in the perception. It's a consumer controlled market nowadays. It's not anymore the production control market. Earlier we used to produce a lot, and the focus was more on the productivity side of the production. So you need to produce as much as possible and then push it towards the consumers, and consumers will consume. That was the idea, late 90s. And then things started shifting towards more into a consumer sovereignty. Consumers are the king. Consumers give the feedback, hey, I want this product to be like this, and the producers or the supply chain has to provide that services. Otherwise, the market will see that, oh, that product is not good, I'm not going to buy it. So so with that trend, now consumer perception is a very important factor that affects the price. So that's consumer perception. Then comes the competition. So competition, so that means that market type, what type of market you are, your product are in. So if it is a competitive market, based on the competition from other people, you will find there is a price change. So if more people comes in a competitive market, the price is something that you cannot control in the market. So it's kind of like you are more like a price takers rather than price makers. Excuse me. Then the last one is the cost and expenses, which you as a farmer or you as a fisherman manage to control. Like, is it like a cost or expenses, like, how to manage that one so that I can get maximum price out of it. So if the price, the cost of the expenses or cost of the inputs goes up, that means eventually the expenses goes up, right? So then that affects the total revenue too. So these are the factors that affect the price. Now, from a producer, now I'm moving the focus from price to producers decision making. So whenever a producer, that means the producer can be a fisherman, it can be a fish farmer, or it can be any agriculture producer, a farmer. So in either scenario, their main goal is to maximize their product from whatever the goods that they are producing. So it could be a shrimp, it could be a fish, it could be tomatoes, it could be potatoes, anything that they are producing. They are trying to make a maximum profit out of it, and that's a goal of a producer. On the other side, they want to pay the very least amount of the money on the inputs that they are buying. So they need to buy inputs like fertilizer, chemicals, antibiotics, or any diagnostic services, labor, electricity, all those things. They are spending some money, and they want to give the lowest price on those inputs, so that they can have a better margin for their profit. But in a competitive market, the price is only the price is allocated for the highest bidder. Whoever has given the highest bidder, the seller is ready to sell it. So yes, I want to minimize my cost, but again, I want to be in the market to get the input as well. So it's a place where you are trying to find out, okay, what is the best price that I can buy it? Okay. Now, overall, producers use this profit maximization strategy to streamline their production. So they will try to either try to gain more price through the market, or they try to increase the productivity. I'm not saying that the production increase in the production, the productivity. That means even if they are producing small quantity, they should be produced in a way that it is efficiently produced, so that you're not wasting any resources, wasting any input. So that way you can reduce the cost. So increase the productivity, that could be one way of increasing the profit. The other one is minimizing the cost that you spend on the input. So that is the whole idea of like profit maximization strategy. So even those who don't understand the economic concepts, they are going in this way. So they a producer will always think in this way. Now, when we talk about this is a very hypothetical scenario where, like, it's a real world, a perfect world scenario where nothing happens. I put fish seeds into my pond. I feed them with feed. I fertilize the pond to make sure that there's enough algae for the fish. You did everything that is part of the production process, and you get the catch, and the survival rate is really high, and you could sell in the market, get a good price. So that's what, like, when we are talking about profit maximization strategy and all. But in reality, there are a lot of risk involved for these farmers. So okay, I'm sorry. This is another graph that's showing the profit maximization. So the red line is the place where they can do the maximum production based on the input availability for the farmers. So based on the input, they can produce the maximum up to the red line, and the green line is showing the cost line. So whenever the cost and the productivity line matches, or like, intersects, that's where the maximum profit is. And people are trying to attain this Y star. Y star is the amount of the goods need to be produced from the input X. Okay, so we are trying to identify how we can do that. Okay, now coming back to the risk, like I said, it's in reality, there's a lot of risk involved for the farmer. So, mainly if you are categorizing risk into two, there's production risk and then market risk. The production risk is that means like you are not, you are expecting certain quantity of the product from your farm or from your business. You are not getting enough quantity from that production. So it could be, so the agriculture or aquaculture sectors or the industry is a more dependent on certain biological process. It takes certain time for you to harvest. That's one of the limitation of this agriculture or natural resource related industries. Another thing is like diseases, which we have no control at all. It's kind of like an unpredictable outcome that can cause to your farm. Labor, I just mentioned the labor issue, but it can be a electricity issue. Cost in the electricity has gone up, or you're not getting enough specialized individuals who can work on the farm. It could be any input related issues. There may be natural calamities like hurricanes or like flooding. So especially in our especially in the scenario of Kerala, the flooding is kind of like inevitable for us, at least from 2018. It's kind of it's a common phenomena. So you need to consider that as well. Like sometimes it might wash out all the products from your farm. Another thing is like the government regulations. Like, if there is a change in the government regulations that could affect the production of of a certain sector, it will affect the production too. So these are like a production risk, and that's one type of the risk that the farmers are handling. The another type is the market risk, where they are not getting enough price for their product. So remember that the profit maximization, we said it could be the quantity that you're producing. That quantity is getting affected by the production risk. And then another aspect is the price that you're getting for your product. So that price can also be affected because of the market condition. So it is depending on the market type. Mostly the monopoly and oligopoly, there won't be any much changes in the price risk, because they are the price makers. So based on market conditions, the price will change according to their strategy, not our demand. So monopoly and oligopoly. So I think most of you knows what monopoly and oligopoly. So if those who don't know, if any students are there, it is a monopoly is where the market, you are the only seller in the market, and all others are buyers. So you can dictate the price for that product. Oligopoly, on the other side, is having a bunch, very less limited number of buyers and sellers, and then a lot of buyers. So what happens with the oligopoly is like oligopoly in oligopoly market, all these sellers can come together and then come up with a strategy that they're going to stick with a certain price. So they're going to stick with a certain production so that they can earn more profit. So one of the best example for the oligopoly is the OPEC, the oil producing countries, like the organization. That's why they can control the barrel price. At certain time period, they will stop the production just to increase the price of the fuel. So that's the best example for oligopoly. So oligopoly and monopoly are not going to affect much from the market risk. Why? Because they are the one who is creating, or they are the one who is making the price for that particular product. At the other side, other type of the market, and there are different other types of the market. I'm not mentioning about that. I'm more concentrating on the competitive market. The competitive market is where, like, there's no restriction for anyone to start business or start selling the product. So anyone can enter, anyone can exit anytime. So that's the competitive market. And in this competitive market, what happens is, as the more entrants come into the market, they are taking the share of their profit, right? So what happens is the price of the product will go down. So in a competitive market, the consumers are getting benefited more. Why? Because all the competition from the sellers will affect the price reduction, or it will cause the price to go down. So it is a good thing that everyone can start doing business, but on the other side, the profit margin is less, plus there is a risk for the price too. So the price can fluctuate anytime. That's not only the case. Like, it's not just the market type that dictates the price, and the price itself has a risk based on the other factors that we mentioned before. That's where I explained what are the factors that affect prices. So it could be the demand supply, it could be the consumer perception, it could be the competition, like the one that I mentioned about the market type, or it could be the expenses, the cost and the expenses. So what happens if the input price goes up, the ingredient, so the labor cost has gone up. In that case, will that labor cost is affecting the price of the product, or the cost of the feed is increasing, or cost of the fertilizer is increasing. If the cost of the input is increasing, that means your expense is increasing. Will that be transferred to a price increase or not? If you have an increase in cost, and if you are not being balanced with a increase in the price for the product, you are going to be having a lesser share of the profit from the market, and that on that particular production cycle. So that's the risk that the farmers are facing, and it's not a one-time deal. It's a continuous process. So the price risk is not a static problem. It is the price of the product will be fluctuating all the time, and different factors affects different affects the price of the product. Now, it is important to identify from a marketing strategy. It is really important as to identify the price dynamics, like now how the price is being fluctuating. Is it in a certain pattern? Is there any other factors that we need to consider while we are considering the production? So why it is important? Because our production or our profit margin depends on the price of the product, and if it is fluctuating very frequently, that is another problem for the farmer. So the farmer can take a decision whether to invest in that business, or do I need to go for another species or another sector where the price is not that much fluctuating. So it is really important for us to identify the price dynamics, and a lot of studies have done on how the price is being fluctuating in certain sectors. In seafood also, there's a lot of study. I think recently in Indian context, I think Dr. Krishnan, and I don't remember the other author, they published a paper regarding the same. Now, what is the most of the study that they have done is what is the supply and demand, and how if the quantity increases, how the price is going to be increasing, how much extent that the price increases. All of them are being studied. Now, what we are looking at is the volatility of the price movement. So we are trying to identify, so volatility is the uncertainty around the potential price movement. The price is moving in a certain way. So the price is moving in a certain way, and within that price movement, there can be some fluctuation in the price. So we are trying to identify as much as we can how uncertain or how fluctuating this price can be. It is it is essentially what we are trying to do is we are trying to identify or measuring the variation in the price trend. So price is moving along, so it can be going up or it can be stagnant. So it is the general price trend, and from there can be variation. Okay, so if you are looking at from a statistical point of view, it is the mean. So the price is the mean price, like, if you're taking average of a monthly price to get the trend. So the monthly price is the average of the daily price. So it is going up or down, or that is the mean. But then there can be some variations. That is the standard deviation of this mean price. So essentially what we are doing is we are trying to find out the standard deviation of this log price. So volatility, in essential, volatility is the standard deviation of the log price. Now, so I'm going to stop it here because if I go further, it is much more technical, and then I don't think it is it will be a good talk. It will turn out to be a good talk. So I'm going to stop here, and then I will move on to the specific scenario that I'm trying to explain. So that gives you a little bit more sense of why this looking at the price volatility is important. Okay, let's move on to the catfish industry. Catfish industry is one of the leading segment of U.S. aquaculture, and it is one of the success story of U.S. aquaculture industry. So if you ask anyone in United States which one is the most aquacultured species, they would definitely say catfish. Now the things are changing a little bit, but still they hold the position of having a strong association, strong industry, having their own marketing strategies and all those things. So it is considered as an exemplary success story for U.S. aquaculture. But that doesn't mean that the catfish industry was always having only good times, not any bad times. But a catfish industry has gone a lot of issues. So in especially between 2003 and 2013. So one of the they have one of the main factors that affected to their decline. So they have some ups and downs. So one of the major factors is, especially during 2003 and 2013, there was like a huge decline in the price of the product. One of the main problem was the decline due to the volatile feed and feed grades. So the corn and soybeans are the main ingredients they use for the feed, and these the fluctuation in their market has created a shock in the catfish industry. And also in 2001 to 2005 or 2006 time period, there was a huge surge of low price imports from other countries, and the catfish like basa and tra, which is they right now they label them as basa and tra. So that's a marketing strategy they adopted. They were competing with the US catfish market, and that was a huge burden for the catfish industry. In addition to the stricter environmental regulatory burden on these farmers. So farmers has to comply with all the US regulations, not using certain antibiotics, not using certain chemicals in their pond, or they have to comply with the environment compliances. They have to treat the water. So a lot of regulations that they have to follow, and that also affected their price. Now, coming back to the feed and feed grains, and which is our importance in this particular study. The cost, why we need to consider the feed is because the main single cost for any aquaculture operation is the feed. So particularly in catfish industry, the cost of the feed will attribute to 35 to 50% of their grower cost. That means like half of the cost is coming from the feed. Now, now looking at the historically, if you are looking at the price in catfish industry, like I said, people, different studies have been conducted to identify the price dynamics, and Engel and Hansen in 2004, they came up and say that the catfish industry, catfish price is a cyclical in nature. So it has a cycle, like every 5 years there will be a decline, and then the next 5 years there will be a severe decline in every 10 years. So 5 years a small decline, and the 10-year there will be a huge decline in the catfish price. In 2001 to 2003, all the worst things that can happen to the U.S. market has happened. It's the demand shock because of the September 11, the supply shock from due to the Basa and Tra, and on top of it, the price of the other ingredients started going up. So around 2006, the price of the feed grains started increasing, like corn, soybean, and corn and wheat. They started increasing, and on top of all these regulations, the U.S. has introduced a Clean Energy Act, where they started using corn for more ethanol production rather than for any of the food production sector. So corn started being substituted for ethanol or energy production rather than the food production. That also increased the demand for other ingredients or corn itself, because the corn get more pricier than before. In 2006, mid 2008, there was a feed grain increase in their industry with a volatility in their market. So that means, like, the corn itself has increased the price, or soybean has increased their price, but their market is now unstable. It can be fluctuating up and low. So that volatility, so if there is an uncertainty in the feed industry, the farmers is or the grain, the feed grain, like corn or soybean, that will affect the feed of the catfish, because the main ingredient is coming from the corn and soybean, and that increase in the fluctuation may fluctuate the price of the feed, and that will eventually transfer to the farmers as well. So there can be a volatility or uncertainty in the price of the catfish just because of the changes in the industry of the inputs. So, like I said, volatile feed prices, it is a cause of a systemic price risk for the catfish producers. Now, again, I'm reiterating, the feed cost is the single largest component in the catfish production, contributing towards like 35 to 50% of the total farm technology. Now, the catfish market, when compared to a soybean or a corn market, is a smaller one. Corn and soybean is a big market because it's going as such as a commodity for food production. Soybean, again, it is being connected as like edamame as the vegetable, and then it is being processed into different forms, soybean chunks, soybean sauce, so soy sauce. So different industries are associated with this corn. So corn is like a big industry, or soybean is a big industry because it's a commodity industry, right? So catfish, as compared to them, it's a smaller market. So the chances of the transmission of the volatility from the catfish to go to the input market is less than the transfer or transmission of the volatility from the input market to catfish, because it's a smaller market. Now, most of the catfish, the main product that is being consumed in the United States is a fillet of the catfish and then accessory products. The whole catfish is not a good market in the United States. So a majority, like 95% of them are being transferred, are being into Chile or any other products the consumers are asking for. So a majority, 75% of the catfish is actually sold to a processing plant. And this has been studied by Engel et al. In 2016, and 75% is going to the processing plant. So that means if the price of the catfish is affected by the feed ingredients, feed market, that means the price of the catfish has increased or decreased, might have fluctuated. And that fluctuation will also move to the processing prices, because it is linearly transferred to the next sector of the supply chain, which is the processing plant. Okay, so that's why it is important to study, like, how the volatility of the input price, so the effect of the input price on the fluctuation of the catfish prices, like, farm gate price, where farm gate price is the price where the producers are giving to the supplier or distributor or processing plants. And we are also trying to look into, like, how the fluctuation in the processing price because of the fluctuation in the feed price. Okay. So the idea for this particular paper was to identify the price dynamics of the input market and the catfish market. Like I said, how the changes in the input market is going to be affecting the catfish market. The objective is to focusing on the catfish farm prices and wholesale prices. We are trying to identify the interdependence of the prices of three feed inputs: corn, soybean, and fish meal, evolved over the time. So we are trying to find out, like, how these inputs are dependent, or the farm is dependent on these inputs. Second, we are trying to find out, there is a spillover, or is there anything shock in the market has been absorbed to the catfish farm or catfish processing prices. So we are trying to identify how correlated or how related the corn, soybean, and fish meal with the farm and also the processing. And also we are trying to identify how much fluctuation has happened because of a shock in the input market. And this is what we are trying to identify here. We use USDA data, which is United States Department of Agriculture data. We use catfish farm price data, and we also use processor price data. And we also obtain prices of the corn and soybean from USDA again. We also use the fish meal price data from IMF primary commodity price database. And we got a 326 monthly observation from 1986 to February 2013. Unfortunately, there's a new policy where since the number of farmers were less, there was a disruption in collecting the data because of the confidentiality of the farmers. So after 2013, no data is being available in terms of these prices. So like I said, I will not go deep into the method because it's a little bit more complicated, and it involves a more advanced statistical methods and models to run. So I just give a brief introduction of, like, what we have done, and then I will show you the slide, but I won't give much details on, like, how we did it, what are the different factors. If anyone is interested more, then I can talk about that later during the questions. But for the flow of the presentation, I won't be talking much about that. So the method, we use a two-stage model of price volatility transmission. So what we did in the first phase is we tried to identify the behavior of the mean price. Mean of the log price is we try to model that mean price, like, how the trend is going. Like I said, we are trying to calculate the mean price. Okay, so we use a vector autoregressive model in terms like, we economists, we call this VAR model. The second stage, we try to identify the covariances. So we are trying to identify the standard deviation to look at the volatility aspect of the price. So we use a BEKK model. So this is the specification of a vector autoregressive model, VAR model. Like I said, we are trying to identify how the price, so here the price of the product is depending on the price of the different factors, like, it could be input, it could be different input, right? So so we are trying to identify how the price, the mean price, is being affected by the other prices, input prices. In covariance, we try to identify the behavior of the, like I said, we are trying to identify like how much fluctuation happened in the price, whatever they estimated the mean price based on the input price. So if we see the fluctuation, we can relate that fluctuation with the input prices that we used in that model. So that's what we did there. And more, so if anybody was interested to see what Beck model is, it's Baba, Engel, Kraft, and Kroner model. It is it's a well-established price volatility model that they use in all the industry, not just in the seafood. It is being widely used in other industry as well. Okay, so. And then we tried to forecast using a WRF model, so that we can identify where the volatility happens. So now, coming to the result. So this graph shows the time path of the prices, and then a log price returns, and then a squared log returns. So the level price shows the trend of the price. The log returns of the price shows how frequent the changes happen. So as you can see, so I've included the farm price, processor price, corn price, soybean price, and fish meal price. So you can see that there is a huge fluctuation in the farm prices, or in any of the prices. So farm prices has been, sorry about the pop-ups. So it is fluctuating too much. That means there's an increase and decrease, and it's hugely fluctuating. So if you take the farm price or processing price or corn price or soybean price, you can see a lot of fluctuation. Fish meal, yes, it is fluctuating, but it does have a different nature than other prices, farm prices or processor prices or corn price or soybean. The squared log return of the price shows the volatility and clustering of the volatility. So now we can see that, that we can see specifically, we can see that there are clusters of the volatility. So there's a highs and lows. That means, like, it's jumping. So that means there is some uncertainty in that region, and you can see that there are certain clusters. And if you look at carefully, the farm price is following some of the patterns of the soybean and corn price. So the pattern of the volatility is following the farm price is following that trend too. Now, if you're looking at the correlation estimate of the time, again, it is a time varying correlation estimate. So we are trying to look at, like, two things at a time, how correlated they are. The first one is farm processor, farm corn, farm soybean, farm fish meal. Again, we repeated that for the processor price and corn price, processor price and soybean price, processor price and fish meal price. We can see that. So the dotted lines specify that there is no correlation. That means there is no relationship. You can see that the farm price and processor price are highly correlated. So that means, like, anything that happens to the farm will eventually get to the processor processing price too. Corn and soybean and fish meal, all of them are having some correlation, but not a very strong correlation. So Again, the corn and soybean in later period of our study period, it started showing a decrease in the correlation. So as you can see that a small drop in towards the 2010 region for soybean and corn. That could be because of the other alternative people started thinking of using as ingredient. So fish meal, as you on the other side, like you can see that the fish meal, the correlation started going up. So that means fish meal could have been substituted for corn or soybean because of the change in the corn or soybean. So it's a long-term trend, so as you can see that the corn and soybean are going down, so fish meal is going up. Why? Because the market is so unstable for the farmers. The farmers are trying to find out the alternative for their feed. Okay, so this is a write-up for the correlation. The fish meal price shows a high correlation with the catfish price, and soybean does not show much correlation. Like that's why it was showing in the towards the zero range. Farm corn and farm soybean saw a sudden decline at the end of the sample period. That, like I said, it's because of the substitute for soybean in the catfish feed. We also see a slight increase in the fish price and fish meal price towards the end of the study time period. Like I said, it is kind of like stuck or truncated at the 2013 region. We need more data to identify what happens after that. Processing price, like I said, there's not much correlation. So it is either zero correlation with the corn or a negative correlation with the soybean. So negative correlation means if the price of the soybean goes up, that means the price of the processing price is not much affected, or it will go in opposite direction. So if it is going up, that means the processing price can go down too. Okay. Now we are taking a look at the VIF, the volatility information. Okay. Now, I've given a different panels for the volatility response for farm price, farm processor price covariance, and then we also look at the farm corn price covariances, farm soybean price, farm fish meal, and processor, and then we are looking at the processor area, the processor price, then processor corn, processor soybean, and processor fish meal. So that's like, I included all of them in one big chart. So you can see that there is volatility. And if you can see that if you're looking at the farm price variance, you can see that there is volatility. So that means once there is some shock happens, the price is increasing. Okay, or price is changing, like it's not increased, but it is a response, right? So it could be up or down. So price is fluctuating, and once there's a shock in the farm price, and it takes a long time for it to reach to the equilibrium price. The bold center line is the equilibrium price. So it takes a long time for the catfish price to get back to the normal price. So if it is decrease in the catfish price, it took a long time for them to come back to the original price that they were used to get. Now, if you're looking at the farm processor, it is a direct relationship. So as long as the farm price is coming to the normal, the processing price is following immediately to that equilibrium. So there is a strong, and it is supported by the correlation too. It strictly follows the farm price. Now, if you're looking at the farm and corn price, the volatility is there, but it is coming faster, coming back to faster to the equilibrium. So volatility happens, it fluctuates, but it come back to the equilibrium really fast. For the soybean price, it takes a long time. So because of the shock, in the soybean price, the farm price will take a long time to get to the equilibrium price. And the fish meal also has, so eventually if you're looking at, there is a shock. So if there is a shock in the input market, that means there is a shock in the farm price too, or a processor price. The processor price, as you can see, it's the shock is due to this corn price of soybean is very less when compared to the farm price, and that's why that is much explained in the correlation region too. So in short, we see that after a shock in the price of the input, there is a positive responses, which means that there is a fluctuation in the farm price due to the shock in the other market. Farm price variance is taking a long time to reach the equilibrium level, and farm price from the fish feed input prices, it shows a strong responses to the volatility shock. And farm price is much more affected than the processor price because of the fluctuation in the input industry. So what we can learn from there, this is more technical. We talk about a lot of price and whatnot, but what we are getting from this whole exercise is how the prices are connected and how it is going to be affecting the catfish farmers and also the processors, catfish processing plants. So like I said, volatility is there, and some of the responses are stronger responses, some of them are slower responses, and it takes some time for them to get to the equilibrium. So it is possible. Why? Because like I said, catfish market is a small market. They absorb whatever happens in the bigger market. So the corn price or the soybean price, whatever that happens in that industry, will be transmitted to the catfish market. Because of the size of the market, catfish has to absorb whatever the changes that happen in that industry. But what happens with the farm prices, even though it got affected, and it is not recovering from that shock easily than the other input industries. Now, is this exercise complete? Is it giving a good way of looking at the price? No, we need to further consider, like I said, in 2013, one of the things, after 2013, a lot of changes in regulation, a lot of changes in the market conditions happen. So we need to know, what happened after that, and that is something that we are trying to identify the data and all those things. So that's one thing. Another thing, we need to identify the shocks from the specific market, like corn and soybean. So right now, we didn't look at the shocks that happen in that corn and soybean industry. So we just said that, okay, there is some fluctuation there, and it could be that, we are now saying that it could be that, the corn has been substituted for ethanol production. We don't know, and that's something that, something we need to identify in order to identify the full effect of what happens with the catfish price. So, and also another thing is we didn't include the price of the catfish feed. So right now we only consider the price of the corn and soybean, which we use for producing the feed. We didn't consider the price of the fish feed, how that is fluctuating, and then how much it is being transferred to the farm price. We haven't considered that in our model, which we need to something that we need to consider in the future study. So with that, I think I finished the presentation, and I would like to take any questions if you guys have. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Pratheesh, for a very interesting talk. Though when you came to the Beck model and all, it went over my head. So,
yes.
but very interesting. I think Anilji has a couple of questions. Anilji, would you like to ask Pratheesh directly?
Is Anilatan, is that from
yes.
I think I worked with him on one of the project. Anilatan, the Adacula Anilatan?
I believe so. But he's typed a couple of questions in the chat box. So He wants you to, he said, good presentation, Pratheesh, and please explain once more the Basa and channel catfish tussle in the US seafood market. That was his first question.
അതെ 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 അഡാക്കിലുണ്ടായിരുന്നല്ല ഡിഗ്രി കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് പ്രതീക്ഷ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്ത് എന്റെ
I work with you മറ്റേ oyster project ലേട്ടാ
മറ്റേ സുനാമി സ്കീമില് TRP സ്കീമില് ADB സ്കീമില്.
Thanks, sir. Okay, thanks for coming. Okay, so
Anil sir, your questions maybe you can ask directly to Pratheesh.
Pratheesh ഒന്ന് explain ചെയ്യട്ടെ, എന്നിട്ട് ഞാൻ additional question ഞാൻ ചോദിക്കാം.
Okay. Fine. So the Basan trial, what happened with the Basan trial was like, it's a import to the US, right? So for Basan trial, they were getting subsidies from the government side, so their production cost is less, plus their labor cost is less, and they have no regulations on their side to come up with the culture. So it is easy for those countries, and Basan trial is coming mostly from Vietnam, China, which the regulation is not much being followed, when there is not much regulation, when there is not much restrictions on how to produce the product, they can produce in any way, they can add more chemicals into the pond, they can come up with antibiotics to get away the diseases, and on top of it, these governments were giving subsidies for these farmers, which was not being provided to the US farmers as well. So what happens is US production cost for the catfish is really high because of the regulations, because of the certain restrictions in their production technology. Whereas the China and Vietnam and the other countries, I think it's with Thailand. I mean, these are the three countries they were providing this Basa and Tra to US. So they were having subsidies and other non-restrictions in their production technology, which causes them to produce really low, in really low production costs. So what they did is they transfer this low production cost to the price of the catfish. So what happens, when they exported this catfish, they started selling it in a extraordinarily low prices in catfish market in US. So that was a strict blow to the US farmers, because US farmers were following all the regulations, and then they were not getting subsidies for their production. They couldn't come down to the price where these Basa and Tra were offering to the market, and it causes a lot of conflicts in the international trade organization. They came up with a lot of negotiations, and earlier it was just catfish, everyone was selling catfish. Either it is exported from imported from the Asian countries, or whether it is coming from the US, everything was catfish. And later they identify that the species that is coming from Vietnam, Thailand, and China is different from the channel catfish which the US is producing. So that's why they differentiated. One way to negotiate to resolve the issue was they differentiated the product by saying that US catfish is catfish, or they put a label along with their product called US raised catfish. And on the other side, Basa and Tra, they give a different name called Basa and Tra for the other product. So this is what happened with the Basa and Tra, or the US catfish market during later 90s or early 2000. And when I joined as a master's student, this is we were seeing the first implication of that market, how to remove that uncertainties in the market. Yes, Deepak, I saw your raise. And
before Deepak starts on his questions, Anil Chetna, if he has follow-up questions for you, okay. Then maybe Anil Chetna, you can ask him any follow-up questions that you have.
No, ma'am. Just I want to know the tilapia. We are facing issues. Any comment on tilapia marketing issues in Kerala?
Can you just give a small background, because I am not very aware of that. If you can give a small background, Anil Chetna, about the tilapia marketing issue in Kerala.
Yeah, ma'am. because
I can't
tilapia.
imagine.
കുഴപ്പമില്ല, കുഴപ്പമില്ല. Because department was promoting tilapia farming in Kerala in with the biofloc arrays and all, but the marketing was a big challenge and big issues to farmers, and eventually many farmers dropped the farming by tilapia, and they want to shift to other species or drop the farming practices, and that was an issue. But everybody knows. I think Pratheesh also knows some idea on this.
First of all, I'm not a big fan of biofloc. It's not like, I'm like from a production technology point of view, it is good. Like, it is it may be giving you more production, but one thing that I don't know, the way that they advertise the product, or like I don't know why it is, but they are not accounting for the cost of that biofloc, and then that causes not even in Kerala, like even in United States, a lot of people like switch from biofloc to another because of the technology itself is costly, and the cost of the technology, if the cost of the technology is more, that is absorbed into the profitability of that farmers too. So that could be one of the reason. I don't know, it may need to be like, studied much, if there is any data available that that we can work on, and later that I'm interested to do that. I think this is one of the issue. And then the price of the again, tilapia is more like a commodity market. I don't know the scenario in India, but again, I have to look at it. If someone has worked on the tilapia market, if you can give me more information, I can give it. But as of now, this probably one of the reasons. Like, and if it is a biofloc, that may be because of the increase in the production cost. So when they advertise the production cost, like, when they like, I have seen some of the biofloc presentation, they are not accounting for the huge initial investment that they have to bring in. So that causes a lot of like a miscalculation in the profitability. That could be one of them. And I don't know the exact market conditions in Kerala right now. But if there is data, if there is something that we can collect data, I'm happy to do that. Work with you, later.
I guess consumer perception also probably plays a big role, because in a place like Kerala, where people are so used to that the huge variety of species available for consumption, and tilapia has this kind of so-called bad name. It's not as good as so I wonder if that also affected, because like in your slide you were showing that how consumer perception is so important. One of the factors, like
yeah, it could be like that's what I said. Like, I don't know exactly what's going on right now, so so need to be studied.
Yeah,
it is there, because tilapia is a cheap fish, and it is not it won't command better price. And another thing is that cheap tilapia from Andhra Pradesh is flooded into Kerala.
exactly.
Another thing is biofloc cost of production is higher, and so many issues are there. That way, it created problem, and it created problem to the department. And Pradesh, you can get the data from Devika or Kufo's team on that.
Okay. Yeah, I will work with them. I'm currently working with them for some paperwork, and after that I think we can.
Because Devika Pillai and Babita Rani, Sifa Bhuvaneshwar was technically supporting on these projects, and so both have the data with them.
Okay. I will work with them.
Thank you, Pradeesh. Other question can be taken.
Now Deepak has been raising his hands for quite some time. Deepak, now you can ask your questions.
Oh, there's a virtual hand raising. I can.
You can bring it down now.
Yeah, you can raise your. You can drop down.
Yeah.
Pradesh, so very really good talk. I appreciate how you simplified it to make it more understandable to biology people. Um, I know you purposefully avoided all the technical what seemed to be difficult for other people, but I have one major question and a very minor one.
Okay.
The first one is I understand you tried to do this analytics and to understand what factors are influencing the price volatility and everything. And just looking on the larger purpose of the work. Um, Oh, so what's the, I mean, okay, it's good to know what happened in terms of you have the price, you have the data, you analyze and find something, but how it is useful in terms of predictability in future or something, or that is one aspect. The second one, whether your model, can we use that model for other fishery, seafoods, and what could be the other factors that probably not considered in this model, when you extend that to other seafood. And the third aspect is whether we have enough data out there that you could push this to other seafood market, other seafood species or whatever.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, and this just an exercise that we did in terms of like in a catfish industry, catfish farming industry. It could be applied for any seafood. If you have like data, shrimp, like it could be used for shrimp. It could be like open fisheries, but the open fisheries, the factors will be different because the factors, the feed is not a factor, so the feed industry is not going to affect, or like the feed ingredients, like whatever that is, that industry is not going to affect. There are other allied sectors that is being associated. It could be the fuel price, it could be the labor cost, and different depending on the scenarios, depending on the market conditions, there can be different different factors, right? So again, yes, can we look at the price volatility to look at what happens, how fluctuating that is? Yes, it is possible. It is completely possible for any industry. Like I said, the price volatility is a common or a general thing that people use in the stock market, like how fluctuating a particular stock is, and then try to identify which stock that I need to invest. So the same thing that so same approach is I'm gonna answer the Deepak's first question, like what happens to how is this useful to the farmers? We can look at the fluctuation in the market. If the fluctuation is too much, that means that there is too much risk in the market. So there itself that they can identify, oh, that species is not good for me. I'm not that risky person. I'm not getting involved in it. And this is essentially what happened in catfish industry. To catfish industry, we saw a lot of folks leave the catfish industry and join the other industry, or like it could be cotton, it could be tilapia, it could be more like a indoor fish culture rather than the outdoor, so that they can fetch more price. They went to like a more value fish than catfish, so that they can get that price. So essentially it can be used for a farmer to identify whether this investment is good enough for me to get venture into. So if I'm a catfish farmer, I need to know if it is like too much fluctuation. I don't know, is it worth for me to get into it? And that's the indication that we can give. And some, like studying the effect of different other industry, we could indirectly try to identify or tell them that, hey, there's something going on there, and that's why there is an issue. So if you are switching to some other industry, there may be some less fluctuation, or there will be some reduction in the price risk. All these things can be can be used as a mechanism for the farmers to identify whether they have to venture into that investment or not. I think I mentioned or I explained all the questions for you. You asked a lot of questions.
No, no, you didn't. So, okay, so catfish industry is like well studied industry. Probably you can see a lot of papers out there. So
Mhm.
yes, I agree with that. But what you don't get the same metrics if you want to switch to another aquaculture species. In terms of see if what if there's a new seafood species developing in the market have more potential, and but you don't have the metrics because it's data poor. And I'm just looking, okay, you have this model for to analyze one is something existing, but or what information you have if you want to switch over to something else, there'll be more risk probably there.
Yeah, like if it is a new species, if you're switching to a new species, you need to identify the market. So again, the whole routine repeats. Like you need to identify what product do I need to switch for, like, and what is the market condition. So we
Yeah,
like
my
before
question
we
is in
venture.
the more in the perspective, how much flexible is your model for working with the data poor, in a new species, emerging new species market?
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it need data. Like
yeah,
this is, like I said, it is a very advanced level. So we are not looking at the mean, right? So we are looking at the standard deviation. Like we are trying to identify the fluctuation in the mean price. That requires a lot of data, and as you can see that we used from 1986 to 2013, so huge monthly huge data set points that we use to identify the fluctuation. If we can we do it for an exercise? Yes, we can do it, but how reliable that we can come up with and say that, hey, this is because of corn price, or this is because of the soybean price, we may not be able to tell that. It requires a lot of data to come up with a more reliable or valid conclusion about the data. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Thanks. My second question is more a little bit technical, but you would understand anyway. So you were talking
Yes.
about the log returns, I think.
Yeah.
So looking at that graph, I'm just curious, is that fluctuations you're showing based on a base reference price, or is it a lag difference price, like you're looking comparing to the just one previous value and looking at those fluctuations, or an overall average or something, or from a reference period?
No, what we did is like so this is the graph that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm talking about the
So
second column, log returns. So
yeah.
you're comparing the fluctuations against a base reference price, or is it looking each data point is looking on its previous value?
So again, it's more like a technical again, like you mentioned. So log returns, like there's a formula for calculating. So we have a base price index. Like we are using a base price index to calculate the price returns, and then we are taking the log of that price return to come up with.
So,
So essentially, it does have a reference point.
so what is
So
the
usually it is
to
one lag. So what we do is like we try to identify how lag patterns are in the price. So usually, like for economists, when we look at the price, we try to identify what is the lag period for that particular data. So most of them it will be one time lag period. Some of them it will be two lag period, 3 lag periods. We identify that lag period, and then that we introduce that lag period into that price return formula. So it is not a standard formula, but essentially the idea is like we are considering the lag. Yes.
okay, so it's not based on a reference period, or
No.
compared not against a particular reference period, and also not an overall average, right? Because
Not an
my
average.
worry is, if you have a seafood, uh, species having a price that has been increasing consistently for a long period of time, and if you take an overall average, that'll be skewed, and you need some justification to use that. So that's my
Yeah.
that's the reason why I'm
So
asking.
and again, this is more like a trend of the prices, right? I mean, like, if we want to see the trend of the prices, if we are taking average or making a reference of a certain time period, we probably won't be able to give a justification on, like, why we did that, and even, like, looking at the reference point will not help us to give us a trend, right? I mean, like, we are trying to see the trend, like how that is going. Yes, there may be some shock, and that's what we want to see there. Like, if there is a fluctuation, or if there's a increase in the price in that trend, we are keeping some time reference for that. What is the purpose of, like, looking at the trend, right? So when we are creating trend, we don't take any averages or anything.
It's
like
picking the large fluctuations rather than looking at the smaller changes. Is that right, if I say?
So two things, like, we are trying to find out, like, how fluctuating that is. Like, you can see that, there's big this curves and also smaller ones. So we are trying to find it. So if you're looking closer to the farm market one, and so 1980s to 1982, as you can see that the price of is fluctuating again, but it is going down in a larger trend. It is going down. So we are trying to identify all these anomalies, like all these fluctuations, but again, a larger picture. And then if we want to, like, zoom into a certain time period and what happens there, we can also identify if we are looking at these.
So if I say the trend is not coming into this calculation, is that right? Because trend is relative, depends on from which data period you start looking from, so you can look when you're high, and then you can say is going down. You can look from, choose a different data point to start with, and then it will be a different perspective. So they are relative in terms, if you look at trends and everything.
Well, that's why, like, we usually keep some important milestones to start with, right? So if it is, like, if you want to look at, like, let's say 2001 anomaly that happened in the market, we know that that something happened in the market. So we could, like, take 10 years below that incident. We could capture some of the things that happened in before that anomaly, and then we see that the big fluctuation there. And then if you go from there, we can see what happened after that, right? So different way we can look at it. Like, right now we went up to, like, the maximum data that we could get, like in 1986. That's where they started, like, coming up with 1986. That's where they started with the process of having data collection. So that's where we started with. But like, the trend is giving a trend, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, like, what time frame is, but if you want to look into a certain time frame that you are interested, then we can look back at a time frame where we can get the data from. And again, secondary data, especially, like, fishery data, it is really hard to get. Like, there is not a systematic way of, like, collecting data until recently. So we only get, like, probably from 2000 onwards, or, like, 1990s maximum, like, we can get data from 1990s. Below that, or before that, I don't know. Like, it all depends on the fishery. It all depends on the importance of that particular industry on the economy. I think I answered the question, or do you still?
No, thanks, Pratheesh.
Okay. Pratheesh, I had a quick question. I don't know if it's sensible. Have these kind of studies been used for some kind of risk mitigation strategies or policies or packages? I don't know. Price volatility studies, to kind of.
Mukta, can you repeat that?
Yeah, I mean, these kind of studies, have they been used as inputs, for some kind of developing some kind of risk mitigation strategies for, like, the farming industry, or I don't know. I mean, are they being used like that?
Well, we could, again, like I said, it is more like like whether to like another different strategies, like, either they can go with an alternative feed. So if this feed, so in this particular example, like, they could have transferred to a new industry and find an alternative for corn and soybean. There's a lot of studies going on. So that could be one reason that, farming strategies that they can come up with so that they can secure their price risk, right? So that's one way to go. Another one is like, altogether, like they want to say like, oh, this seems like in this industry. So maybe it's not coming from the catfish ingredients price. It's the price itself is fluctuating for some other reason. So that means there is no point in staying in that business. They could have like left and go to, yeah. So different depending on that particular on that particular scenario, they can make a decisions like whether to continue or like if it is continuing, like what are the alternatives that they can do. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you everyone. I think there's a good chat session going on there also. So
no, actually, Anil, when I was like working with him for ADAC, I met with an accident and Anil and came to my home, like, so that's where we were like, chatting. Yes.
Yeah. And it's nice to have Anil and, attending our talks. Please do attend more often, Anil.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you. So if you don't have any more questions, I think we'll wind up for tonight. Thank you so much, Pratheesh, for spending quite a bit of time with us. And so wishing everyone a very happy Sunday and advance Onam wishes as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy Onam to all.